Okay, so I'm with Raquel Pennington. Raquel, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
Pretty good. So we last saw you in the Octagon in June. How have you been keeping since then?
I've just been kind of hanging out. It's been about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years since I've actually got to enjoy the holiday season. So I had a bunch of family come into town, and kind of just enjoyed the holidays with them. I was originally scheduled to fight back in October, but I sustained an injury. Sarah McMahon and myself were scheduled.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So we were going to reschedule, and then they ended up scheduling her against Juliana Pena, I think this weekend, actually.
So do you still want to fight Sarah McMahon, or are you looking at other fighters now?
I would definitely love to fight anybody who's ranked above me. Obviously, my ultimate goal is to get back to that world title, but I mean, everybody in division brings a different challenge, so why not?
So you've had one fight during a pandemic, obviously. How is that camp and then going to Vegas for the fight week? How is that different due to the restrictions?
Um, I mean, for me, it kind of felt like being in the Ultimate Fighter. It was just obviously no crowd. So on the Ultimate Fighter, we don't have a crowd. You have production. Dana's there, and then you have your small teams, and that's kind of how it was during this whole situation. I am stage fright, so just not walking out into an arena filled with thousands of people kind of was a lot better for me. And it's kind of cool to actually just be able to hear everything your coaches are saying. So it's like walking into the gym pretty much for another training session, except for with bad intentions.
I was going to ask about that actually, whether the Ultimate Fighter helped prepare you for that, because like a lot of fighters don't have that experience. So they're obviously, in your opinion, being more affected by this, do you think?
Uh, I don't know. I mean, some people really thrive off of the hype from the crowd and it
Yeah.
really pumps them up, and that's how they flip their switch. So I'm sure that there's some definitely affected by it. I know for myself, and then even for Tisha, we experienced the Ultimate Fighter. So we both actually really liked it. But I do miss the crowd. I mean, when you sit there and you have those moments in a fight and the crowd just starts chanting your name or something. So it's definitely different, but I think it just kind of depends on who you are and how it's going to impact you.
So did you enjoy it though, having no fans at the crowd? Because obviously you'd experienced it before, but do you enjoy that feeling?
Uh, like I said, I mean, I miss hearing the chants and I miss hearing like just that hype behind it. But overall, I mean, it is a lot easier to hear the coaches and walk
Yeah.
through things. As far as when we actually hit each other, it's kind of crazy because you can hear how intense the hit actually is when it's just quiet there. Um, so it's just, I mean, it's a different feel. I think overall, being in the position that I'm in, obviously, I love having the fans. But for my nerves, it's nicer. So.
Yeah. Talk to me about that last fight then against Marion Renault from your perspective. How did that go for you? Obviously, you won the decision.
Yeah, I mean, overall, it was a really fun fight. It was a really fun camp. It was a super short camp. They called, and I had about 4 weeks to get ready, and I was just like, oh, because I don't walk light. It's just not in my genetics and everything else. So, I tried to actually get Marion to fight at 145 just to kind of be comfortable, and then I was like, you know what, forget it. Like I'll do the 135, and so majority of my camp was just kind of focused on getting the weight off and stuff and getting into really good shape in the time frame that I could. And then I think COVID, I know a lot of people during COVID have had a lot of struggles and different things, but for me, COVID was something that was just really positive. It gave me time to actually slow down and kind of reflect. And I didn't realize how many emotions I've been carrying from a lot of things. And so to be able to process and kind of just sit back, and I watched some of my fights during that time and everything. And I've had a really hard comeback ever since my fight with Misha. And I had an 18-month layoff and some major surgeries done. And it's been one thing after another, going into a broken leg and just really impatient, realize how much it kind of took on me emotionally. So that during the COVID time frame and just kind of being in quarantine, I kind of got to reflect on that, and it played a huge part going into the fight with Marion, just because I actually like kind of pulled my head out of my ass, really. And so I felt like myself going back into it. I had a lot of fun training. And then just going out there, I mean, being super calm and just feeling like myself, like I wasn't wholeheartedly fully out there and aggressive the way that I still have. I mean, I still have so much potential to unleash but just the fact that I went out there and was able to perform and have fun with it and dominated the fight, like that was great.
You mentioned 145 there. Is that something you would look at maybe as a permanent move one day?
Um, I've thought about it, but honestly, like I like the competition that's in the 135 division. I just feel like it's a lot more established and stuff. But I mean, I'm not opposed to it either, so I wouldn't mind going back and forth.
Yeah. So let's go back a bit. Let's talk about the Ultimate Fighter experience. How intense is the training in that environment?
I mean, being on the Ultimate Fighter is kind of just like living your dream. You don't have to focus on anything else. You have no outside distractions. I mean, obviously, you're locked in a house. We don't get to have TV and
Yeah.
radio and magazines and anything to the outside world. So that's pretty different, but it gives you the opportunity to interact with a bunch of other fighters and people who share the same dream. And then, as far as, I mean, the training, you're pretty much just, you wake up, you go train, you come home, you eat, you take a nap, you go back and train. And so it's just really focusing on all of that. As far as the training, I mean, it didn't feel any different as opposed to what I'm doing. We had days in there where we were doing strength and conditioning and then breaking down the aspects of the sport. Some of the we got on with us from time to time and really did that. And we got to work with like the coaches that she brought in. So it was just, for me, it was fun to see like the different aspects. It was fun to learn from somebody new, because everybody has different ways in the sport. Like there's always something different. So overall, that was fun. It was challenging because obviously it's all filmed in a short time frame, and you pretty much have to walk at weight. And like I said, I mean, when you're trying to stay at weight and you just never know. I mean, a fight happens and then you can be the next fight that's called, and then you have to make weight that following day. And it's really hard to kind of just focus on that. So you got to not get caught up in the house life with a bunch of other athletes who might be doing crazy things and not necessarily have to worry about their weight so much or whatever. And they're staying up late or doing different things, drinking and having fun, or they just fought and they're celebrating and you're trying to stay focused. So, I mean, there's so many different challenges that comes with it. But overall, I mean, I actually really enjoyed the Ultimate Fighter experience.
Did you get used to the cameras following you around by the end, or was it still weird?
I finally got used to it.
Yeah.
Having to live with cameras just constantly in your face. You're sleeping and there's cameras, or you're wearing the microphones, and I mean, you can't go anywhere. I remember half of the time I just had to go use the restroom, and I'd run in there, and I learned to pee super quick. But I'm like messing with the mic because it was just like it's awkward having somebody just kind of all up in your business. And but eventually, you just kind of get to a point that it's just like, it's whatever. And so now it made it easier for now that my UFC career kicked off and all the interviews and everything are there.
So you said you're a nervous person. That moment at the start of the Ultimate Fighter when Dana White walks in with Ronda and Misha, and then later when they're picking their teams, how does that feel?
Well, so I'm not necessarily a nervous person. I just get stage fright, I guess you can say. Like I'm stage shy. So I'll just kind of get quiet. I grew up a little bit more on the shy side, even though I'm very extroverted and I like to talk a lot and do all the things. That came out later in life. So it's just like being in front of big crowds that I would just get shy, but I thrive off of it. Like I really enjoy it. I've always been an athlete. So going into the Ultimate Fighter experience, I mean, it was just kind of like embracing the journey, and there was a lot of excitement there. And then just kind of what that experience was going to be like and who the coaches were going to be and meeting Dana for the first time and stuff. I mean, overall, it was just, like I said, it was embracing that journey, and it was exciting to be a part of something. And not to mention, I mean, my season was the first time that they ever had the women on the Ultimate Fighter. So it was just cool, like being able to make history and kind of seeing where it was going to go.
So after the Ultimate Fighter, you were really thrown right into the wolves, weren't you? You fought Roxanne, but then your next fight was against Jessica Andrade, and then it was just a year later when you fought Holly Holm for the first time. So were you
Yeah.
mentally prepared for that at that stage, do you think?
Um, I don't really know, I mean, I was like, okay, I just got out of the Ultimate Fighter, and then I got invited back for the finale part, and then it was just really cool experiencing that and being in a big arena. And then all of a sudden I get the call and I'm the first one back from my season to have a fight. And it's like, okay, here it goes. Like you kind of just had to figure it out. And then right after that, I got another call, and my career's just been like super active, and I've been getting like I mean, I feel like I've fought the best of the best. You know, they offer me some really great fights, and um, it works for my personality type because I just really love challenges and stuff. So it's just kind of one of those things that you get that call and it's like, all right, here we go, and you just kind of gear up for it.
Was it weird then later fighting Misha after going through that experience with her as your coach?
Yeah, it was definitely different. You know, I mean, obviously, so I've never been, like I said, I've always been an athlete and I've always had people that, like, you know, I've admired their skill sets or different things, but I've never been like super starstruck over anybody and whatnot. And Misha, she was one of those people who she was one of the first women that I seen fight uh in MMA when I was learning about the sport. And so it was kind of cool. Like I admired like what she did and like being one of those first females out there. And then I met her when I was fighting on Invicta championships, fighting championships, and then to actually go through and her be my coach and build a little bit more of a relationship with her. Well, then after she coached me and our season ended, she invited me out to be her training partner for her fight against Ronda Rousey, the second fight. And so like then we went from like, you know, like student to like training partners, and we built a friendship there. And then all of a sudden now they're like, oh hey, you guys want to fight each other? And from what I was told, Misha actually was the one that called and asked for the fight. So I was like, oh okay. But you know, I mean, that's what happens in the sport. We all build relationships, but we meet each other because of this. So I knew eventually it was going to come along and happen. But when it all started to happen, I kind of, during that fight week, you know, Misha and Brian, they were being like super friendly, chatting to me like they always would when we cross paths and stuff. And I kind of like had to put on like this like game face type thing. And I wasn't necessarily like trying to be rude, but just for me emotionally to separate the difference and the friendship and everything that we built, I had to do that. And then after the fight, you know, obviously we shared a special moment in the octagon where those pictures still like linger around from all the media places and stuff. But yeah, that was definitely one of the fights that like I'll never forget, and the experience overall with it.
We'll move on to talk about the Amanda Nunes fight now. Looking back at that, what can you take from that experience?
First off, you know, I mean, thankful for the opportunity and stuff. I mean, not many people get to fight for that UFC world title. For me, it was bad timing. I felt like there was a lot of pressure coming into it too, just given the fact that we were originally scheduled. Like I said, I mean, I just had an 18-month layoff and I asked to come back and have like not such of a high profile
Yeah.
fight. But it was just kind of one of those things where like, okay, well, you can either take this fight and see how it goes, or we can give you another fight. But if you take that fight and you lose, then you're getting set back. And so there was kind of some pressure there. And then just with breaking my leg and everything, I think for me, I emotionally wasn't ready. Physically, I definitely wasn't ready. And that definitely played in the fight. I mean, Amanda caught my leg in the first round within that first minute, and I fell, and it took everything I had to stand up. And honestly, I was just in defense mode the entire time. So I think I should have taken the time to truly rehab, to try to get myself into a better emotional state, and kind of slow down. But you know, I mean, that's what it is. It's life lessons, it's learning and stuff, and everything happens for a reason. So I'm thankful for the opportunity. It kind of just motivates me. It took me a while to like actually go back and watch that fight, because knowing how I felt in the fight as opposed to how it actually looked were completely opposite. Like, did I take a bit of a butt whooping? Sure. But the way I actually felt in there and the pain that I was in with just my leg alone, like I just like, it was completely different. So you know, I'm actually proud of myself for the things that I've had to overcome, because that was one fight that just kind of made me get into place and get into gear emotionally again. And I had a couple other setbacks from there, but I think that my journey was meant to be that way. So that way, in the end, I can be a better fighter.
Was there anything that like you wouldn't notice watching, but from being in there with Amanda, where you just look at and think that's what makes her so good?
You know, everything that Amanda threw at me that night, I completely expected. I personally was not myself. Like I said, I mean, I've been in fights with fractured bones, broken hands. I've been cut and bleeding open, and I can still function. the pain that I felt from that nerve damage, I mean, that was complete nerve damage that I sustained in an injury not even 5 months prior. And so I just came back way too soon. Like as soon as the doctor was like, well, yeah, the bone is technically healed, but your leg is not healed. And I was like, okay, I'm good. And, I had a lot of pride and I was pretty stubborn through that just because I wanted to get back. So I put myself through some stuff in fight camp that I probably shouldn't have even pushed through. I should have truly taken that time. But as far as Amanda in general, I mean, everything that she brought that night, like I completely expected. I was surprised by like a few things. I think Amanda's obviously a very great fighter and stuff, but I mean, she's knocking chicks out and doing everything. And as opposed to when she hit me, like I like wasn't phased by the punches. Um, and then like when I think it was the second round, I picked her up and I used my burst of energy that I had to take her to the ground, and kind of put her there. Like I just, there was some surprises to where things were a lot easier than what I expected, in that aspect. But overall, I mean, for me, I think that fight was just more personally, like I should have just really taken time to get my body to where it really needed to be prepared for such a fight.
So obviously after that fight, there was a bit of controversy about the way the fight was going towards the end. Looking back, how do you feel about that?
I mean, yeah, okay, our coaches are there and stuff, and everybody looks from the outside in, and they see certain things. But again, nobody knew exactly what I was feeling. And these aren't just some bums that I pick up off the street. Like these are my coaches who I build relationships with, who know me inside the gym and outside the gym. They know me as a person. They know like we can understand each other just by a look. And those are the relationships and the trust we built. And so in that fight, my coaches that night, especially Jason, like he got pretty emotional and we were at the emergency room and he was just like, like, did I make the wrong decision? Did I make the right decision? Like, tell me. And I told them, and the same thing that I would tell anybody else, like they made the right decision. They didn't let me give up on myself. And in reality, like it wasn't the fact of like what Amanda was necessarily doing to me. It was what I already sustained. And then what I took right at the beginning of the fight. And then I had 24 minutes left in that fight. And I was just trying to work through something in there. So I mean, overall, like I'm not disappointed in my coaches and everybody can have their opinions. But like I said, I mean, we build those relationships and I completely trust them with my life and what they would have in the best interest for me. And they knew what I was like struggling with just by the look in my eyes. And so, I mean, the controversy, like for a while we sat there, they were catching a lot of heat and we talked about everything and their families and everything were getting threatened. Like people in this world are a little too crazy and they just really don't know the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah. So obviously after that fight, you had some struggles again with Holm and Durandamy, but you after that win against Renault, it feels like you're on the right track again. So what's next? 2021. What's the plan?
Yeah,
What's the
I
goal?
mean, with Jermaine, that was finally the eye opener. I needed time. When I went into the fight with Holly, honestly, I felt great. I was ready to fight. It's a little hard to fight somebody who doesn't want to fight, and a lot of people have their opinions on that and stuff, but they don't understand what it feels like. Especially Holly's way bigger than me. She's taller than me. The girl used her leverage. She used a game plan that worked for her, and it turned out to be really freaking boring. But like honestly, it worked for her with me being smaller, and like I just could not get off the cage. And so it was really frustrating in general to be waiting for that fight for 5 years and then for us to be the co-main event on such a huge card. And then it turned out that way. But when that fight did come up, I was in a great mental place and ready to like kind of roll. And then after that, I got really frustrated. The Jermaine fight, I mean, it was another thing. Like I kind of just like, I think I was trying to pick myself up from the world title fight and just kind of, I mean, that fight was in my home state. So it was just like, all right. And I felt a little bit of pressure to that. And I wasn't necessarily like kind of just thinking in the smartest ways. And those were things that I had to learn as an individual and kind of slow down again. Plus, I was having thyroid issues at that point, and they were testing me for like thyroid cancer. A lot of things were going on. And it was just, I mean, it's been a rough time frame, but now like I feel back in gear, feel ready to go. And so being on the right track as far as getting that fight and that win with Marion and then having the fight with Sarah, I mean, I was super motivated, but I mean, injuries happen. So now I want to get back into the groove of everything. And I would like to get at least 1 or 2 more wins under my belt, some exciting ones, and then I would love that world title shot again.
So what about a potential fight for you coming up obviously soon? Aspen Ladd, maybe? She's one of the only girls above you in the rankings that you haven't already fought. What do you make about that fight one day?
Oh, most definitely. Like I said, anybody above me, and then everybody brings a different challenge to the table. Currently, with the way COVID's going and the way that they have fights every other day, it feels like the schedules are pretty booked up. So it's kind of hard to get a fight right now.
Yeah. So obviously, this time next year, start of 2022, where do you want to be in your career?
I would definitely love to be either fighting for the world title or be the world champion.
Just lastly, big fight this weekend, McGregor and Poirier. You've actually fought on 3 McGregor cards, is that right?
Yeah, 3 or 4.
Yeah. Why do you think there's a reason they keep putting you on his cards? Because obviously big cards.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think there's something to say there. I think
Yeah,
I'm
definitely.
definitely the dark horse in women's MMA, but I think here in the next year, the world's going to be pretty surprised, and I think UFC sees that, so they give me those opportunities. But I mean, as far as this fight card this weekend, I'm pretty excited for that. I'm a fan of both guys, but it would be great to see Dustin get that win.
That mirrors pretty much what every fighter asked about this fight has said. Everyone wants to
Yeah,
see. Everyone says
he
it's a close
deserves.
fight, and I'd love to see Dustin win. That's like
He
common
deserves it.
theme.
You know,
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
that dude's a grinder. He deserves it.
Yeah, awesome. And thank you for the time today, Raquel. Any shout outs you want to give, or where can people keep up with what you're doing?
You know, you can kind of keep up with me. I'm not super crazy active on my social nets, but I mean, I throw stuff out there and kind of stay busy and try to interact with people. So you can follow me on Instagram, Raquel_Pennington, and then on Twitter, Rocky P MMA. Overall, I just want to give a shout out to obviously my biggest supporters, my family and my friends, and then the awesome team that I have supporting me. But all the fans out there, I truly appreciate the true fans that I have and the love that comes from all of them.
All right. Well, thank you. Best of luck in the next year and beyond.
Thank you.
Good to have you.
Cool.